Did we start?
Yeah. Hey everybody, I'm Dr. Alex Pattison.
And I'm Dr. Swauger.
And this is the Toxic Truth. And this is really one of our exciting and more influential, I think, workshops, because when somebody thinks about getting healthy, they tend to think about diets and exercise, or maybe some type of supplementation, but they don't necessarily focus on eliminating toxins from their lives. And we're going to leave no stone unturned as we discuss this afternoon.
Yeah. So like you might be on top of your exercise, you might be on top of your nutrition, you might be getting adjusted weekly or every other week or whatever it might look like. But if you are still being exposed to these toxins that we're going to discuss today, like that could be sabotaging your health.
And you might be looking at this now and be like, hey, I eat pretty clean and I use some cleaning products that at home that are maybe not the standard conventional type of things. Man, toxins are everywhere, and just small incremental changes can oftentimes have drastic overall improvements in individuals' health and well-being, because toxicity issues, as you're going to learn tonight, can lead to hormonal imbalances, gut detox. It can lead to mood disturbances and sleep disturbances, general aches and pains throughout the body. If our body is experiencing toxicity, it's impossible for us to ultimately project our ultimate health potential. So our mission at City of Bridges and Chiropractic is a big one. It's a bold one, but I think that it's a clear one. And that's to radically transform the lives of 34 million people and encouraging them to reclaim their health through the 5 essentials of max living, which we'll discuss with you this evening. And these aren't just wellness tips. You're not just going to get a couple of good ideas this evening. Well, I guess, yes, you'll get a couple of good ideas, but the purpose of this evening is to begin to change your paradigm shift to really understand and think differently about your health and well-being, so that you can have different outcomes when it comes to your health and well-being. We live in a sick society. We live in a medicated society. We live in a depressed society. And if we want to have something different than society has, we need to begin to make different changes. And that paradigm shift of the way that you think about your health and your well-being is really the cornerstone and the foundation in order to be able to see that.
Yeah, you already have all the tools you need to efficiently detox. And we're going to discuss how you can just boost your system's naturally occurring detox pathways.
So let's talk about just how important it is to detox and how many toxins individuals and Americans are exposed to.
Yeah. So believe it or not, on a daily basis, you are most likely exposed to over 700,000 toxic chemicals. Just think about your daily routine. Like, first thing you do when you get up, you go to the bathroom, use some mouthwash, you brush your teeth, you put some lotion on your face. You might, use some kind of deodorant or hair products, and all that stuff, it accumulates and it adds up, and it creates this toxic burden that can really, like we were saying, sabotage your health. Another interesting statistic is the average woman is exposed to 168 chemicals just within the first 10 minutes of waking up. And, that sounds kind of crazy, but like, think of how it feels like when you walk into a Bath and Body store at the mall.
I can't, right? I have to walk on the other side of the mall. That just irritates me.
You get hit in the face. Like, it's like a wall that hits you in the face of all the things that are just off-gassing from all these different products. And it's not natural. It's not good for your system. And it could really cause some problems if this exposure is taking place every day, for a long period of time.
And like we had talked about at the top of the show, this is really a aspect of your health that is 24/7 being exposed to. You're never going to eliminate your toxic exposure. It's about minimizing your toxic exposure. And we're going to give you some pretty neat understanding as far as what that looks like. But before we get into that, let's talk about what toxins are, because I think most people think about toxins in their synthetic form, things like pesticides and plastics and industrial chemicals, all of things that we know are really bad for us. Mm-hmm. But really, anything in excess is a toxin. Too much water inside of your body can be a toxin. Even a good thing can be a problem. But things like mold and bacteria and heavy metals, which we see in our air and our water supply here in Pittsburgh, are toxins in and of themselves. And I think one of the interesting things about our neck of the woods here is that we live in a town where houses are a little bit older. And mold and water in the basement is a pretty prevalent thing, right? Mm-hmm. And I can remember having conversations with like my grandma being like, man, I grew up in a moldy house. Nobody had any issues with mold. It's not a big deal. Well, maybe 80 years ago, whenever grandma was coming up, it wasn't a big deal. But grandma also wasn't exposed to the amount of chemicals that we are in today's society, and why I think we're starting to see an increase in a human being's inability to deal with mold, because toxins in of itself is like, a bucket. You just keep filling it up with water. Well, you're not going to have any issues of water on your floor until that bucket overflows. Toxins begin to build up in your cells. You don't have a problem until it overflows. And the amount of toxicity that we're exposed to is just having most Pittsburghers and most Americans walk around with buckets that are just about ready to tip over and or have already done that to create some health concerns inside of the body. So another really interesting thing that I think is important that we discuss is that the World Health Organization, who sometimes I love and most often I don't really love a lot of their recommendations, reports that 24%, almost 25% of global deaths are linked to some type of environmental factor, specifically toxins in the air, the water, or the food that we're consuming. So 1 out of every 4 deaths is essentially caused by a toxic burden on the body, and why it is so important that we begin to figure out effective strategies of beginning to minimize that. And I think we want to take that a step further. Again, we've talked about Pittsburgh so far a lot. And while Pittsburgh has made some big strides through the years in terms of cleaning up our air and cleaning up our water, and I want to commend some of the bigger businesses and industries in the Pittsburgh market that has really focused on that. While we've made some improvements, we still rank as some of the worst air and some of the worst water when compared to other necks of the woods and other zip codes and other geographical areas throughout the country. So it's very important that we as Pittsburghers, because of the water that we're consuming and the air that we're breathing, that we are doing everything within our power to minimize our exposure to toxins. And as a guy who's passionate about helping Pittsburghers reach their ultimate health potential, is one of the reasons why I know you are so excited to cover this topic today. And if we want to make bold changes in our health outcomes, we want to make bold changes in Pittsburghers' health outcomes, it's going to take bold action. So I'm going to do our first call to action today. Before we move any further, I'm going to ask you, our listeners, to make a bold action. And that bold action is very simple. Click the share button right now on your Facebook page so that this message gets out to your family, your neighbors, your coworkers, the people that you worship with. Because I can promise you, from what the research that we've already shared today of 1 of 4 deaths being caused by an exposure to one of these chemicals, that share button has the potential of literally saving somebody's life. So Doc, what do they need to do right now?
Click that share button.
Click that share button, man. We'd love you. We'd appreciate you if you could do that.
So I want to talk about what health is, right? Health, a lot of times people think is how we're feeling. Like, I feel good, I must be healthy, but it's deeper than that. We need to take a look at this on a deeper level. Your health is not just the absence of disease. It's how well your body is functioning and healing on a day-to-day basis. And look at this chart right here. It's really interesting. And I think this helps us kind of wrap our minds around that paradigm shift Doc was talking about. We don't even experience symptoms until we lose 40% function in our body, right? So sometimes, that loss of function can happen quickly. We could sprain an ankle, and then all of a sudden you have pain, swelling, inflammation, redness, and you get those symptoms that are associated with that sprained ankle. And we know at that point you've lost over 40% function because you're experiencing pain, you're having trouble walking on it. But to maybe a lesser extent, there's the toxic exposure that we're talking about that accumulates over time. And you might feel fine because you're hovering right at that 60, 65%. You're feeling pretty good. But it gets to a point where all of a sudden things aren't good anymore. So we need to start looking at our health like this kind of slider where, we can do things to build health by detoxifying, exercising, getting appropriate sleep, drinking good, clean water. Or we can do things to sabotage our health, and our health slides into the opposite direction. So, what would you like to add to that, Doc?
So a couple of things that I want to add on to that. So we're talking about, the body, and first of all, how amazing it is, right? So you can literally have lost 39% function inside of your body and you don't even know that. Then we lose that 1 more percent. We hit that 60% threshold, and now our body begins to experience some type of symptom. Well, here's the concerns that we have with determining your health by how you feel. Because if you're functioning at 61%, how are you going to feel?
You're going to feel okay.
You're going to feel okay. You're going to feel fine. Then you lose 1 more percent, and now you have a symptom. Well, the 2 diseases that kill Americans the most, heart disease and cancer, are called the silent killers because you tend to not know that you have them until you have them. And the first symptom of a heart attack, oftentimes for a female, and for a male for that nature is death, right? And same with cancer, is that the diagnosis of being able to live for a long period of time after that is a problem. So if you're determining your health by how you feel, statistically, that is a huge problem whenever it comes to the two disease processes that are killing Americans. Then let's take that a step further. You're functioning at 61%, you feel fine. And let's say that the symptom that you experience isn't heart disease and it's not cancer. Let's say that it is a disease process that requires you, like a GI issue, that requires you to go to the doctors. When you go to a doctor, how do most doctors treat symptoms? With what?
With medication.
So we treat a symptom, we treat a disease with a medication. And if I take one of my medications a day, it's going to effectively treat that area. Is it going to heal me? No, because drugs mask symptoms. They don't heal us. And the other problem of that is if I take one medication a day, my body and my liver and my kidneys and my digestive system can usually get rid of most of the problems that are associated with that. But if I take an entire bottle of my pills in a day, what's going to happen to me?
You're going to overdose.
I'm going to overdose. I have to have my stomach pumped. It could shut down vital organs. It could be deadly. So the American healthcare system is treating symptoms with toxins, and that's like a long way to come around that. So why it is imperative that those of you that are listening to this right now begin to treat and understand health and function differently than how you feel. The definition of health is how well that your body is functioning and how well that your body is healing. And if that is the medical definition of health, the World Health Organization's definition of health, how well do you want your body, Shannon's body, your boy's body functioning and healing? At what percent?
100.
At 100%. So how do we do that? We do and live a lifestyle that's in congruence with building function and building vitality and not decreasing that. And that's how we build the body and the life of our dreams. And we're going to talk specifically this evening about how toxic exposure can negatively impact that and move you generally in the wrong direction, because the effects of toxic exposure go far beyond just like some minor irritation or discomfort. Chemicals are directly linked to long-term. Can you blow that out for me? Yeah. Long-term health issues. And studies show that exposure to household toxins is associated with increase of chronic illness and disease, including autoimmune diseases, which we know are rampant here in the United States, respiratory conditions, neurological conditions, hormone disruption. So a lot of the issues that individuals seek out medical help with are often related to an individual's toxic exposure. Understanding that and improving your body's ability to detox can help with, in many instances, these types of disorders, and why it is so important that we as Americans are trending in that direction.
So let's do something fun. Let's debunk some myths about toxins. So myth number one, if it's sold in stores, it's safe. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know many people these days that would believe that myth. But, we know that the FDA doesn't require pre-market safety testing for personal care items. So a lot of those, the things you have underneath your sink or that you have in your medicine cabinet or in your bathrooms, a lot of those things are not tested for safety at all. And they're especially not tested for safety when they're used in conjunction together, right? So you could be using this hairspray, this makeup, this deodorant, and they each have all these different, chemical concoctions. There's no safety testing on that. So you got to be very careful, especially, when you're going to the local store. Myth number two. Now this one, is a pretty good one. So organic products are always toxin free. Not necessarily. Organic definitely means it's better for you. It has less pesticides, but these products can still contain natural toxins like heavy metals or processing chemicals. So I think it's still important. Like even though you get organic produce, clean it off when you get it home. You never know what could have accumulated on that.
So buy organic. We're not telling you not to buy organic, but just because you consume organic doesn't mean that you've completely eliminated your exposure to toxins.
Correct. Myth number three is small exposures don't matter. So if we have that, it builds up over time. And if you have that kind of outlook, like small exposures don't matter, it's going to build up over time and your toxic burden is going to get to a point, like Doc was saying, where your bucket's overflowing and you start to experience all kinds of different symptoms. Especially with things like endocrine disruptors like BPA, like the things found in plastic bottles, these can disrupt your hormones and cause really bad health problems over a long period of time.
So we're going to talk about in a moment alternatives. We're going to talk about some of the things that are highest toxic exposure, and then we're going to provide solutions for you. I love, like you had mentioned earlier, the BPAs and the plastics, a stainless steel water bottle. So we're just kind of eliminated all of those issues in something along these lines. So there are some myths that we need to debunk and get moving in the right direction. The other thing that I think is important is that personal care products are not nearly as regulated as you think they are, and the FDA does not require pre-market safety testing for most cosmetics and personal care products. I think I almost need to repeat that statement. It does not require pre-market safety testing. They just put it out there, they give it to you, you consume it, whatever happens is on you and not on the company. So that means that companies that introduce products with potentially harmful ingredients without any formal safety testing or government approval, which, you know, I'm an animal guy, love animals, right? And I believe that we shouldn't be toxifying or testing these products on animals. But if we're not testing these products on the animals and the FDA is not testing these products, who are the products being tested on?
Us,
you and your kids. And that is a travesty, and things that need to begin to change here in a society. Hundreds of chemicals commonly used in cosmetics and lotions and shampoos and deodorants are linked with health concerns, hormone disruptions, allergies, and even cancer. Like, we know that a toxic load can lead to that. And the US really lags behind protecting consumers from harmful chemicals. The FDA regulates, we had talked about this earlier, about how they don't test products. They do. They've tested a whopping 11 products, right? 11 toxic chemicals have been banned by the FDA. Now, I am a big America guy. I am a big proponent of the freedoms and the liberties that we have here in the United States. But there are some concerns that are associated with that. And that leads to how many chemicals so if we've regulated 11, how many do you think that the European Union regulates? Like,
at least 12, right?
10 times that. It's 1,300 that they regulate. Canada, up north of us, regulates more than us. You're going to learn about that here whenever we talk about some food dyes and things along those lines. So your government is not protecting you. It is up to you and your knowledge about the products that you're consuming and how they can and most likely are negatively impacting your health, and making some lateral movements we'll discuss with you today on how to minimize that.
So we don't want to bring all this to your attention to scare you, right?
No doom and gloom around here.
We're bringing you this information because really it's empowering. Once you know how to make proper decisions when you're in the stores, you know which products you can switch out for something cleaner, more natural. I think you're going to feel really good about yourself, and you're going to feel good that, you know, you're helping your kids and your family become more healthy. Empowerment's all about reclaiming your health and taking control of the choices that you make every day. So let's let go of the fear. And I know that, you know, these toxins are hidden everywhere, and, you know, it's kind of scary, but let's focus on the empowering yourself with the knowledge and taking simple, effective actions.
Okay, so let's look at some of the hidden dangers in everyday products. Again, we don't want to be all doom and gloom. We're going to provide you the everyday products that you're coming in contact with that are negatively impacting your health, and then we're going to immediately provide you with some solutions as far as what that looks like. So let's get to everybody's favorite food first. And so many foods can be marketed as healthy. You know, it blows my mind when I walk down the healthy aisle in Giant Eagle right upside of us and just know how many chemicals that I'm coming in contact with. So it's not about only being in the healthy aisle, but understanding which products are truly going to bring you health and which products are negatively going to bring you health. And I think a lot of some marketing has had a lot of Americans who are trying to make positive health changes look for low fat or fat-free foods. Mm-hmm. The problem is fat tastes really good, and companies tend not to sell products that taste really bad. So if they're going to remove the fat, which tends to taste good to a human being, they need to increase the flavor in some way or another in order for that product to be desirable and sold and marketable in terms of being able to get a profit on that. So they're often loaded with sugars and artificial ingredients, which make up the lack of flavor from pulling the food out. Mm-hmm. Granola bars and cereal are really one of the main culprits of things that I've seen of reading ingredient labels that are super high in refined sugars, unhealthy fats and oils, preservatives, and even some of these are labeled as healthy, natural, or organic. So you don't really want to pay attention to the front of that label. When you flip that label over and you look at the ingredients, you can really begin to understand if that's going to help build health or negatively impact your health. Sports drinks. If you've spent any amount of time in my office, you know my kids are super involved in sports. It's something that we're passionate about doing. And some of these kids that are on our kids' teams are just drinking all of the sports drinks that are out there. Well, the colors that are in these sports drinks, they don't even exist in nature, right? No. So the chemicals that are put in there, the dyes and the preservatives, are just absolutely terrifying. Doc, I think we have, and what you're going to discuss next, which I'm excited about, are some positive changes that are beginning to take place in the American food supply. Let's go ahead and hit what has recently been eliminated.
Yeah, so you might have heard in the news recently, and it doesn't matter what side of the political spectrum you fall on, they're getting rid of food dye red number 3 in food, beverages, oral drugs, and dietary supplements. It's about time. This has been a problem, I think, for a long time. And red 3 has actually been banned from cosmetics since 1990, but the FDA itself determined that, and the FDA determined that it caused cancer when eaten by animals. So this has been in the American food supply for far too long. And I think it's really affected the children more so than any other, demographic of the population, because think about all these bright colored foods and drinks. A lot of times they're being marketed towards kids, right? It's like the colored yogurts, the cereals, the sports drinks. All of those things were just packed full of the artificial flavors and dyes. And it's really affecting the kids more than anyone else, who are more vulnerable, I'd say, than a full-grown adult.
I 100% agree with you. I am 100% on board with this this change that the administration has put in place of removing this from our food supply. I get it. A lot of these things can be politicized. And I'm not saying that I agree with every change that the administration has made, but if you have a problem with red dye number 3 being removed from the American food supply, you have been brainwashed to not think appropriately. This isn't a political decision. This is a health decision that is going to greatly impact the health and the vitality of Americans, specifically our youth. And if we can begin to reclaim that in our youth, we can begin to build this out and fight chronic disease and illness like we see so many kids dealing with today. If we can begin to change that in our society by as simple as removing a couple of ingredients that the FDA has been telling us for over 30 years causes cancer, neurological problems, and negatively impacts your health. Yeah. If we can remove that, that's when positive changes begin to transpire and happen, and things that I'm super excited about, and why I'm going to number 2, give my second call to action. And it's going to be the same as the first call to action. If you haven't clicked that share button yet, man, click that share button so that a mother, a father, a grandmother, or a grandfather can begin to see the simple changes that can be implemented in a family that will have drastic generational changes in a family's health and well-being. And to give you the real-time thing, like there's no elimination, these toxins from your life are going to be exposed to toxins. It's about minimizing that. Millie, my third, if we're out at like a baseball game, or when she was younger and she didn't really know to say no to something that was red, she'd eat it. She is such a little sweetheart. Mm-hmm. She's a great little girl. When she would eat something red, it would be the end of the world. She would turn on a dime. She'd get angry. She'd get mean. She'd get nasty. And it's because while we didn't buy these products, we don't have these products in our home. She was out with a friend. The friend was eating them. She grabbed them and she turned into a Tasmanian devil. Yeah. Like these changes can happen so quickly if you're not paying attention. And my heart breaks for the children. They're eating these things on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So did you know 90% of Americans have detectable pesticide residuals in their bodies? So that's 9 out of 10 Americans are walking around with pesticides inside of their body. These are neurotoxic, meaning that they can interfere with brain function, and some have been even linked to hormonal balances, reproductive issues, and even cancer. Pesticides are absorbed by the crops, and they remain on the produce even after washing them. So you're really decreasing. So we talked about the problem with organic earlier. A organic, food item. I'm trying to make sure that I get my verbiage right on this. So like a granola bar, it can be labeled as organic, but there's 32 ingredients on there, some of which are not organic, right? But if you're buying romaine lettuce that is labeled as organic, that is a great choice because you know you're getting a pesticide-free product. So the only way that you can truly be the 1 out of 10 that doesn't have these pesticides in their bodies, A, you're detoxing appropriately, and B, you're minimizing exposure to any of these toxins. They do exist. They're not unicorns like these people are in our society, and we want to help you become one of the 1 out of 10. So the food that you can eat can either fuel your health or expose the hidden toxin exposure. Processed foods often contain, as we had talked about earlier, pesticides, artificial additives, and harmful food chemicals that disrupt your body's natural balance. And choosing clean, whole foods really help with that. So go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, back to that organic point. I don't know. A lot of our listeners probably have heard of the Dirty Dozen before. Yes. Basically, like, there's 12 foods that you should always buy organic if you have that option. And usually these foods and fruits or vegetables are the ones that you're actually eating the peel. So think of like an apple or a pear or, what else? Strawberry. Yeah. These are the fruits and vegetables that are going to absorb all of the pesticides in. And even if you clean it off, like, it's difficult to reduce your exposure to those toxins. So the Dirty Dozen, and you can look this up, it kind of changes year to year.
Correct.
A little bit. But you definitely want to make sure if it's part of the Dirty Dozen, you're buying organic.
And you're going to determine the Dirty Dozen from going to the Environmental Working Group, EWG. They have a website that lists the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. And what the Clean 15 are the products that you can buy conventionally that have the lowest pesticide loads. And it's kind of the inverse of what you had talked about earlier, where you're pulling the rind off, like an avocado or a pineapple or something along those lines, or a banana, right? So yeah, you're going to buy organic whenever possible. You're going to follow and avoid the Dirty Dozen, and you can consume the Clean 15. Choose grass-fed and wild-caught meats. We've had plenty of discussions about this in the past, but a grass-fed animal is not going to be eating any pesticide-laden corn or wheat product. Ditch processed foods whenever possible. Look for whole food ingredients and try to avoid packaged goods as much as possible, and really begin to focus on reading those food labels.
And like, when we're talking about reading the labels, not just the organic, natural, like, look at the side of the nutrition label. And specifically, I would recommend going to the ingredient list. And if you can't pronounce something on that list, put it back.
Yeah, I think it's really simple. That is the very good rule of thumb. If you can't read it, you can't pronounce it, it looks like something from a chemistry book, you probably want to put that one back onto the shelves. So let's kind of hit some anti-inflammatory foods that can kind of combat some of the problems we had talked about, because chronic exposure to toxins lead to inflammation, which is linked to conditions like heart disease, autoimmune disease, and cancer. So the three silent killers that we had talked about are all inflammatory driven disease processes. So eating anti-inflammatory foods that are rich in antioxidants can really help the body neutralize its toxic load and reduce the stress and the damage that toxins begin to cause. So some of my favorite anti-inflammatory foods, and the things that we cannot keep enough of in the house, we go through cartonfuls of berries. My kids love blueberries and strawberries. We're buying these organic because these are grown and there's bugs all over them. So you got to make sure that these are organic, but they're high in vitamin C and polyphenols, both of which are great at helping decrease inflammation and improving the body's detox channels. Leafy greens like spinach, kale, Swiss chard have detoxifying chlorophyll in them. They're high in fiber, which helps with the digestive tract and passing those out. Swiss chard is a little bit harder for my kids to eat, but spinach and kale, my kids will grab. They love kale chips and things along those lines. Turmeric and ginger are great. They add great flavor profiles to your food. They contain anti-inflammatory food compounds like curcumin, which are great for not only joint health and decreasing aches and pains, but generally fighting off an inflammatory lifestyle. Healthy fats. We had talked about fat-free food and how that was a problem, but we've really begun to avoid fats in our society. Well, healthy fats can have a tremendous anti-inflammatory response, much like olive oil and fish oils, things along those lines. Green tea are rich in catechins, which help flush out the body's toxic exposure. So those are the types of anti-inflammatory foods that we seek out and that we're going to encourage you to seek out as well.
One of the other problems that we encounter, especially in our kitchens, is plastics, specifically microplastics, because these sneak into our food supply. And you actually will consume about 50,000 microplastic particles per year. And it could be actually considered higher when you consider the amount that might be inhaled. And microplastic, it's defined as any small piece of plastic less than 5 millimeters long. Which, that would be something you'd be able to actually see with the naked eye. But this, can go all the way down to the microscopic level. And these microplastics enter our body through our bottled water that we're drinking, through the seafood that we're eating. Some salt that you get might be contaminated, and then a lot of processed foods as well. The house that you live in, this is where you're spending most of your time.
Let's rewind on that a minute ago, because we had you had hit the microplastics in both seafood and salt.
Correct.
And one of the salt sources that I like that is good is sea salt, right? But the problem is, we know that our oceans and our seas are loaded with plastic. Yes. The fish are consuming the microplastics. Clearly, it's getting into the sea salt, which maybe means that even though you're trying to do something right by eating fish and utilizing sea salt, you're exposing yourself to these toxins.
Yeah. So we like to use Celtic sea salt. It's tested for microplastics. It tastes amazing, and it's got a bunch of different electrolytes in it. It's not just sodium. So there's some really great salt. You can go on Amazon and do a little
spend a ton of money on salt.
Right,
if you want
exactly.
to.
But the next thing you got to look out for plastics is inside your home. So like the carpets in your home, the synthetic fabrics, like the couches. These things are off-gassing. Every time you sit down, there's like a plume of dust that comes up. You might not be able to see it, but there could be plastic in there that you're inhaling. So we'll discuss like steps you can take around the house to make cleaner air and water. And then plastic packaging. So like your Ziploc bags, your little plastic containers that you pack your lunch in, the utensils that you use. Think of it like when you get the fast food, you take the fork out of the little plastic package. A lot of times that plastic will just stick on the fork. You might not
even eat it.
You're eating plastic, right? So these things can really disrupt your body's function if you're exposed to it for a prolonged period of time and the exposure gets high enough.
So we get it. We don't want to be doom and gloom, but the problem is toxic in and of itself is doom and gloom. So we're going to kind of quickly transition into that was the bad. What is the good? What do we do for food prep and storage? Doc, let's hit that.
Yeah, so you can definitely reduce your toxic exposure by making some really simple switches in the kitchen, especially. Avoid plastic containers. Like Doc was saying, like don't use plastic water bottles. Grab something that's glass or stainless steel. And that goes for, your storage containers as well. Like when you're storing leftovers, get something that's glass. Like they make some really nice Pyrex glass containers. Choose non-toxic cookware as well. So like, I know a lot of us love our what is it called?
Teflon.
Yeah. Teflon, like, stainless steel or not stainless steel, non-stick cookware. But that stuff, especially if you're using like metal, utensils in it, it'll like eventually scrape off, and that's getting in all the food that you're eating. So you want to opt for cast iron, stainless steel, or ceramic for all of your cooking utensils. And then, like we were saying earlier, wash your produce thoroughly. I know that this is like an annoying extra step sometimes, but just rinse it in the sink, wash it off. I mean, consider using a vinegar rinse even. That's going to be even more helpful. This is a good one that I didn't think about so much is your cutting board. I know a lot of cutting boards are made out of plastic, and whenever you use them over and over again, that plastic is eventually going to wear off into your food. So
if you have a good knife, you're eating those plastics.
Yeah,
right?
Definitely. So get a wood cutting board or a bamboo cutting board. It's going to be a lot better, a lot safer.
It lasts forever. I mean, I think we got ours for our wedding anniversary, and as long as we keep it clean, it is in great shape. It looks good. Like we leave it out on the countertop because it's a good looking piece of cookware.
And instead of using aluminum foil to cook with or store your stuff with, use parchment paper instead. It's a lot safer, and it will prevent that chance for aluminum to get into your food.
Water consumption, right? So if you haven't noticed, I drink a ton of water. I keep reaching and coffee, but I'm reaching over there and drinking my filtered water. We have a nice filter in our clinic that is going to pull out a lot of the negative aspects of water. I'm going to hit those. I'm also going to rewind a little bit to the beginning of the show when we talked about the toxic exposure here in Pittsburgh. Our water supply is a concern. So it's very important and almost necessary if you want to reach your ultimate health potential that you are drinking filtered water on a regular basis. And that's not coming from a plastic bottle, which you had discussed earlier, because that does contain microplastics. We'll go through a couple of the products that we like here in a moment, but let's go through some of the concerns with water, specifically in Pittsburgh, because of our older infrastructure. Lead is a big problem, but also mercury, arsenic, cadmium from old pipes, and industrial runoff is a problem. Chlorine, which we put in there to reduce viruses and bacteria, is a toxin, and this is a problem, and it's in every bit of water that you consume. Fluoride, which we add into our water for tooth health, is a toxin, specifically for neurological issues and thyroid concerns. So if you have a thyroid problem, an over or an underactive thyroid, these are probably things that you want to look into minimizing as far as a fluoride-free toothpaste and filtered water. Pesticides and herbicides, not so much here in the Pittsburgh area, but if you travel north or south into a little bit more of our agricultural areas of Pittsburgh, the runoff does get into the water sources and can contain glyphosate, which we're going to hit here hard in a moment. Glyphosate is probably something that you want to pay a little bit of closer attention to if you're in the Pittsburgh area with maybe a well. But typically this doesn't tend to be so much of a problem in our metropolitan area. PFAs, these are known as forever chemicals, and that's because they are around forever. They don't break down in your body, and they don't break down in a toxic dump. They just sit around or are a problem for a really long time. They're linked to cancer and hormone disruptions. The other one that is a really big problem in any major metropolitan city is that the filtration systems haven't been able to keep up with the amount of pharmaceuticals that we as Americans take. So when we test water, even water coming out of the tap, we can find antidepressants, blood pressure, cholesterol. We can find birth control in these. So just think about the negative impacts that a man is going to have by consuming water all day, every day, that is linked with birth control. And when I was living in Davenport, Iowa, in the Mississippi River, tests were being done on the fish, and they were seeing male fish develop female sex parts as a result of the amount of xenoestrogens from birth control pills that have gotten into the Mississippi River and the water supply. So again, if you are concerned and you're doing everything within your power to stay healthy because you want to avoid medications and the toxic effects of those, if you don't have a filter on your house, that is a huge, huge problem. So Doc, let's kind of go jumping into water filtration. Why don't you hit this one a little bit? I know I've been chit-chatting for a while.
So Doc just hit a lot of the toxins that are hidden in our tap water. But what does water filtration do? Well, it removes the majority of those toxins. So lead, chlorine, fluoride, other harmful chemicals, it'll pull that out of the water. It's going to help support your hydration. When you're drinking clean water, it's going to help detoxify you. We know that one of the ways that you detox is with your kidneys and as you urinate. A water filter is going to help protect your family. And I think, honestly, it tastes better too.
Yeah, I mean, it's clean water that doesn't, I can tell the difference between a tap water if I'm out at a restaurant. Oh, they haven't changed that filter in a while. I can taste that.
Yeah.
And the same thing if, it's the middle of the night and I'm completely dry and I just splash some water in my mouth from the sink, I can taste that. So, do you have a filter at home? What do you guys use to minimize your exposure?
We just use a basic Brita filter.
Those can be great.
I mean, that's, probably entry level right there.
Yes.
I think you guys have a Berkey.
So we have a Berkey, and the Berkey is great. It kind of sits right next to our sink, and there are, I think, 4 carbon filters in there that pull out just about everything out of the water. Now, there's multiple different things that you can do at home. You can have a reverse osmosis filter on your house.
My dad has one of those. It goes underneath the sink. And that's probably the best water I've ever tasted.
It is good. The problem is, though, with a reverse osmosis, it's pulling out a lot of the electrolytes. So it is removing everything. Mm-hmm. And clearly the electrolytes in your water is important. So most people with the reverse osmosis will squeeze some citrus fruits in there.
Yeah.
But one of the positive things about a reverse osmosis is that when you're showering or bathing or brushing your teeth, you're doing that with a whole water system where you can eliminate the exposure from those compounds. Yeah. One of the things that we do, because we don't have a whole house filter filter. I like the Berkey. I think it's, for me and from my research, a better source of water for our family. We have filters on the shower head so that it's pulling that out so that we're not exposing ourselves.
I think that's something that not a lot of people think of, is your skin is constantly absorbing whatever it comes in contact with. And that includes the time you spend in the shower or the bathtub.
Correct. And you can order those things on Amazon. Like, you don't have to spend a ton of money on those. They exist. Some are better than others, but having something is better than having nothing. Absolutely. Right? So that is hugely important. Now, one of the things I know you do a lot of at home, Doc, this is a big part of your responsibility, is cleaning the house. So what are some cleaning products? What are the concerns here?
So, I mean, obviously cleaning products are a problem. You know that, you look at the back of the label and it says call poison control if ingested. But think about it, like when you're using bleach or 409 or, whatever it might be, you're spraying it, and that's in the air that you're breathing. It's getting onto your skin. So I would, try to get rid of a lot of those, a lot of the, bright, colorful cleaning products that you see at the stores, and try to switch to something more natural. Because these things can cause respiratory issues, because they're full of volatile organic compounds. This can trigger your asthma. It could cause allergies. It could cause lung irritation. They can also disrupt your hormones because they contain chemicals like phthalates. So those are found in perfumes and synthetic fragrances. A lot of your cleaning products are full of synthetic fragrances because they want them to smell like a fresh ocean breeze. And that can interfere with your hormones. A lot of these cleaning products have known carcinogens that have been linked to cancer and reproductive issues. So, you might not be feeling it right now, but it could cause long-term effects. And I think you'd feel a lot better about yourself and about your family if you know that these things are not going to become an issue for you one day.
So what are some of the things that we can utilize around the house that would help better alternatives?
Yeah, so one of the good brands for cleaning products is called Norwex. I know that Doc and Jenna, we use a lot of essential oils around the house. Thieves is one from Young Living that makes a great household cleaner.
Smells good.
Not going to hurt you. You could actually eat it and it wouldn't harm you. You can make your own cleaners at home as well. Like we were saying, like with vinegar, you can use that for a multitude of different things. But I would suggest go on the Environmental Working Group website. It's ewg.org. Or if you're on your phone, you can download their app. You can literally scan labels on products and it will tell you what it's rated. If it's, kind of middle of the road, better than what you got, or if it's like top of the line, cleanest product available.
And you can do that real time. So you can be in the grocery store, just scan the barcode with your app and it'll tell you right there the rating. You had mentioned Norwex earlier, and I really like this company. You won't find these in the store. You have to go through a rep in order to do these, and I'm not a rep, so don't ask me. But you can find one if you go to their website on who you need to contact in your area. And what they have is little fibers, silver fibers worked into the cloths, and silver is a natural antibacterial. It can clean that off. So you can use very little chemical. If that's something that you still want to use at home, you don't have to use as much, or better yet, you're using a cleaning product with a clean cloth that is doing the same thing. You can minimize your cost load that way, which I think is a beautiful thing. Personal care product. Lotions, shampoos, deodorants, cosmetics. Most of us assume that they're safe, and I don't think that we could be further from the truth whenever it comes to this. Many of the products contain hidden toxins that can be absorbed directly through the skin, where you tend to place these things and then enter into the bloodstream. So the big ones that are problematic are parabens and phthalates. These are typically found in skincare and cosmetics, more often in the female side than the men's side, and these can be linked to hormone disruptions and reproductive issues. Formaldehyde and formaldehyde-releasing preservatives are used in shampoos and nail polishes, and are classified as a carcinogen. Like, yes, you can buy them at Rite Aid, you can buy them right over the counter, but the problem is that they have been linked and are a known human carcinogen. Artificial fragrances, I know we had talked about this earlier, but there's literally hundreds of chemicals in each spray that you put on, which to me really irritates my nasal passages, and why you had made the Bath and Beauty Works or the cologne and the perfume area of Macy's. Like, I almost avoid that area of the mall. I can't get within 50 yards of it because it just begins to make me sneeze and cough. But not only are they an allergen, but they can disrupt your hormones or endocrine disruptors as well. I just think about that. You know, you have a woman who's dealing with, or a man who's dealing with hormone disruption or fertility issues and things along those lines, and they have no idea that the spray that they're putting on to make themselves desirable to the opposite sex or potentially their spouse is negatively impacting their ability to conceive. It's a terrible thing, but it's a very real thing. And sodium lauryl sulfates, sometimes hidden as SLS on an ingredient pad, is a harsh detergent, and really anything that spuds and soaps up really good is going to be loaded with sodium lauryl sulfate. One of the things that we use in our home in order to minimize this is Castile oil, and it's Dr. Bronner's that we use. And I use this even over at the gym. You can buy a little to-go pack, and you can use it in your hair. You can use it in your body. It smells good. It's essential oils, and there's none of these nasty chemicals that are in there to clean yourself. Dr. Bronner's would be the brand that we would recommend there. So some of the resources that we're going to suggest for you to utilize, to download on your phone, is the Environmental Working Group Skin Deep app. And this is going to be your cosmetics, the Environmental Working Group's clean products, and this is going to be your household cleaners. And the Yucca app kind of covers both of those. So there's three resources that we would suggest that you put onto your phone today so that you can begin to really understand the products that are in your home or that you want to bring into your home, how safe and effective that they are. Doc, again, I know I've been talking for a moment and I want to get to this point here next, but looking out the window, we've been beating up on Pittsburgh a little bit from our water and our air. And if you know me, I love Pittsburgh. I just read I don't think I told you, but I just read before we started recording this that Pickens was traded today for 3 draft picks, which is kind of a bummer. Like I think there's a huge upside there, but maybe not. Maybe it's the right move. So I love Pittsburgh. Like I'm excited about this. And what I'm looking out here, as you were talking last, is I saw a hawk flying around in the sky. And I can remember as a kid not seeing hawks. I don't know if that's because I'm an older dude now and I like birds a little bit more, so I notice them. But I know that we have nests here in the Pittsburgh area from eagles making their way back in. The air is getting cleaner. We are doing a better job. We're not here just to beat up on Pittsburgh. And I think we can see that by the nature that's outside of our window right now. Yeah. But there are still major concerns.
No, and one of the things that I think we'll discuss, if we haven't already, the air inside your home is oftentimes 2 to 5 times more toxic than the air outside.
Correct.
So, and that's where you're spending most of your time. And the reason why it's toxic is because of all the cleaning products, personal care products, all that stuff that you're bringing into your home, not to mention maybe the old insulation, the old lead paint, things like that as well. But, you know, we're talking about empowering steps you can take to make it better.
Yeah. So let's kind of move into, we've talked a lot about toxicity so far. We've talked a lot about how toxins can negatively impact your health. So I think it's important for somebody that's really dealing with maybe a hormone disruption or digestive issues, an autoimmune condition. They're like, man, could this be related to my toxic exposure, of understanding that a little bit further. So we have lots of tests that we can run in order to determine somebody's toxic load. I think the 2 most beneficial that I want to discuss today is our Tox Detect profile and our glyphosate test. So I want to kind of walk you through these, help you understand these tests, to help you understand if maybe this is the right fit for you. But the Tox Detect profile is going to measure 19 different urinary metabolites to assess your exposure to environmental toxins. So we'll literally be able to take a look at a report after running urine analysis on you and be able to determine how toxic you are and which toxins are most negatively impacting your health, and then effectively being able to make some recommendations to increase your body's ability to push those toxins out of you. It can be a really helpful and a really beneficial resource if you're dealing with toxicity issues. So we're using some pretty high-tech technology that does this, that is very highly specific and very sensitive, so that we get very accurate measurements from these. And this will detect exposure to chemicals from the phthalates that we had talked about earlier, the parabens that we had talked about earlier, also benzene and xylene, which are very prevalent in industrialized areas, and many more. We're going to assist in identifying toxic exposures that may contribute to immune dysfunction, neurological disorders, or endocrine or hormone problems, and even certain types of cancers. Can really begin to understand if that is a toxic component that is playing into that. So normally this test alone is $369. To the end of May, we're going to discount that by $30. So anybody that is in our clinic that is interested in understanding about how environmental toxins may or may not be affecting them is $339. So we're going to knock $30 off of that. Not only will we run that test on you, but then you and I will schedule a time to get onto a Zoom call. We'll walk you through the results. We'll help you understand those results. And we'll make any recommendations that may be necessary as far as beginning to eliminate those toxins from your lifestyle or for your life for that matter. The other one that I think is really important is the glyphosate test. So specifically, we're going to look at your urine and be able to see how exposed you are to glyphosate, which is the most widely used herbicide worldwide. Glyphosate levels being too high have been linked to gut microbiome dysfunction, oxidative stress, and various other chronic conditions. Now, we had mentioned earlier, if you're living outside of the Pittsburgh area, out of the immediate metro area where farming and agriculture is important, we can also run this test on your water, specifically if you have like well water that you're concerned might be exposed to. But the average Pittsburgher that would be coming in and interacting with our clinic, the urine analysis is going to be much more beneficial to help us understand your toxic exposure and how to remove that. So if you're dealing with GI issues, autoimmune concerns, this might be a test that you'd want to consider running. This one's a little bit less than the other test. Normally this is $265. Till the end of May, the price on this is going to be $235. We've knocked off $30 off of the price of that. So if you're concerned about toxic exposure and you want to understand a little bit more about how it's affecting you, I would encourage you to have a conversation with either myself or Dr. Swauger to determine if one of these tests makes sense to you.
Great, Doc. Yeah. So many people are unaware that, like we were saying, the air inside your home can actually be more polluted than outdoor air. In fact, what we're breathing indoors sometimes worse than what you're breathing outside. And, we sometimes get the little on your weather app. It'll tell you kind of the gauge of how the air quality is that day. But a lot of times the toxins build up inside your home from the cleaning products, furniture, paints, fragrances. All of this stuff can release harmful substances into the air. We were talking about volatile organic compounds earlier. These are the things that kind of trigger your asthma and your allergies. Formaldehyde, phthalates. These chemicals can cause a whole range of health problems. Most notably, you'd get headaches and dizziness. I know that's how I feel when I walk into the Bath and Body Works. But it can also cause long-term effects like respiratory issues, asthma, even cancer. So indoor environments with poor ventilation, they can trap all these pollutants, which would actually increase your exposure. But, it's not all doom and gloom. There's things that we can do. So I would recommend getting a full house air filtration system. I know that lots of times your air conditioning unit will have filters on it. If you haven't yet, go change your filter before it starts getting hot out. You can also get some plants inside the home.
Plants are great.
Yeah, plants will convert CO2, carbon dioxide, into oxygen, which is what we need in order to stay alive. Plus, they just kind of make the place feel a little bit better. But yeah, plants will filter out the air. An air filter would be very helpful. Open the windows on nice days. Get some fans going. Get some airflow. Because you don't want that air to get stagnant and trapped, and then that's when the toxins start building up.
So the rule of thumb that we have in our house is each level of the house has a air filter on it, and every room in the house has at least one, if not a dozen, if it was up to Jenna, houseplants to help clear that out. Nice. And as a result of that, we know that we're increasing the quality of our air and decreasing our toxic exposure would be kind of my recommendations there.
So again, the EWG Environmental Working Group Healthy Living app, they have ratings on over 120,000 food and personal care products. So if you have any questions, a lot of times, like, you can tell just by looking at the product, like if it's bright colors, like, trying to grab your attention, a lot of times it's garbage. You don't want it. So go on the EWG Healthy Living app, see what a good option would be. And you don't need to go and like empty out your whole cleaning cabinet like all in one shot, but like you can slowly start to phase these things out, and just when you go back to the store, make a little bit better choice. Your body and your family will definitely thank you for it.
All right. So one of the things that we talked about in our last workshop that we're excited about is our new products. We want to keep on the cutting edge of nutrition and resources and nutraceuticals for our patients. And these are the three that we've fallen in love with recently. So the foundational three is a comprehensive synergistic supplement bundle that is really, in my opinion, the best bundle ever created for improving human performance. And the reason why I can say that confidently is that there are 20 clinically studied ingredients and their clinically studied doses in these three products. And not only that, but there are organ meats in here. There's digestive enzymes, which are really helpful. We're going to break these down because there are three. Today's topic is on digestion and specifically detox. We're going to talk about that one a little bit more. But me personally, I take all three of these products. This has replaced my multivitamin. And I know in the past I've done workshops with people and I've just kind of gone through, here's the products that I take on a daily basis. And at one point I was taking 22 different products throughout the day in order to get these nutrients to those specific levels. Some of you have been with us for a long time would always be like, man, doc, like I really like that workshop and you talked about what you take and why you take it. Well, I've kind of gotten rid of all of those. And this is what I've been utilizing. It's easier on me. It's more nutrient absorbed because I'm not taking as many capsules. And this is where the science is pointing. If you want to get the most resources and you want to get the most out of your products, you want to be taking the ones that are most being clinically studied as a result of that. And I think one of the ones that we want to spend some time discussing today is our digestion and detox support product, specifically how this helps with glyphosate exposure. So we had mentioned this over and over again. Glyphosate is an herbicide that is used on conventionally non-organic crops. This is the Monsanto product that you've heard about. This is Roundup. This is the chemical term for Roundup is glyphosate. It is classified as a probable human carcinogen. And I'm going to take that a lot further because we know that the company that makes glyphosate and has a patent on that has been sued in court and has been paid out huge sums of money to individuals that have developed cancer of that. So the research is saying that it's a probable human carcinogen that is out right now. But with the amount of money that is being spent out by some of these companies that produce that, I would say we could probably get rid of the probable statement on that, right? Okay, so one of the reasons that it is such a problem is because it disrupts hormones and it causes gut microbiome imbalances. It also increases the risk of cancer. And you're going to get these through food, soil, is going to be the main way that you're going to get these levels to build up. So yes, we want to opt for organic products, filtered water, grass-fed meats, all the things we had discussed earlier. But one of the reasons that I like this particular product is because one of the clinically researched organisms that are in here is B. subtilis AB22. And what that is a probiotic. But what the research is, I'm going to show you a little graph here in a moment that'll just kind of point out to the efficacy of this particular probiotic, is that it is literally known as a glyphosate shield. It helps shield your digestive tract from the negative impacts that glyphosate has on it. Beyond that, it's anti-SIBO, which means that it stops small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. It's an intracellular antioxidant producer, specifically glutathione, which if you've been with me for any amount of time, you know is nature's most potent antioxidant. So vitamin C is great. Vitamin C is very valuable. Glutathione is even more of a potent antioxidant than vitamin C. You had talked about microplastics earlier. One of the microorganisms that we have in here is B. licheniformis, which has been clinically shown to break down microplastics in the gut so that it doesn't cause the ramifications of what you had discussed earlier. And we also have regenerative organic bovine liver, which is a big long-winded way of saying that it's loaded with vitamins and the essential minerals that you would have from consuming a good, healthy liver. I had promised some research earlier. I'm going to go ahead and blow this one up for you guys. What we're looking at here is the study on B. subtilis AB22 and how it is that glyphosate shield. So the first line that I want you to look at is the gray line, and that gray line up at the top is going to be our baseline. That is going to be our control group. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The red line is intestinal lining that has been exposed to glyphosate. And the further that red line drops down, the more intestinal permeability and the more damage that glyphosate has done to an intestinal lining cell. So that red line, as you can see, greatly decreases your gut's ability to protect you and absorb nutrients when glyphosate is introduced into it. That's what the research is showing. What that green line in the middle is showing is the shield of what B-Subtilis AB22 does. Clinically shown to decrease the negative effects that glyphosate has on your gut. And one of the reasons why I make sure that I'm taking this on a daily basis, because glyphosate is such a widely used chemical in so many different food sources, that if you are taking this particular probiotic, you're greatly decreasing glyphosate's effect on your gut. So the bottom line is your gut is your first line of defense against toxicity and issues along those lines, and digestion and detox in this product helps keep it strong, even in a world full of toxins. So me specifically, I take all three of these products, but it wouldn't be a problem if you're unable to do that or it doesn't fit into your budget, but you are worried about glyphosate, your digestion, and your toxic load. Add this into your lifestyle and you'll begin to see the clinical ramifications of what that does by adding that in. It's a really beautiful thing.
Oh, that's awesome. So the one thing that I would recommend to everybody in the world would be exercise. It's a very powerful way to detox the body. You know that when you sweat, you're releasing toxins through your sweat. And that's going to be one way that we eliminate toxins that are stored in fat cells, is when we're exercising. Your body releases these toxins that have built up over time. Your circulation improves and it enhances overall health. And then one of the other things that I think we've spoken about before is your lymphatic system. These toxins can get kind of bogged down in your lymph. And the only way to promote good lymph flow is by getting up and getting moving. So detoxification from exercise, it boosts sweat, improves circulation, enhances lymphatic function, which helps to remove waste from the body.
Reduce stress. So chronic stress is a major contributor to toxic accumulation inside of the body. It can weaken the immune system and increase inflammatory responses. So when you're dealing with stress, you're more susceptible to inflammation and inflammatory type diseases. And you're also more susceptible to the toxic burden that we're exposed to in our society. So managing stress can be a hugely beneficial aspect of detoxifying your life. Meditation, prayer, yoga, exercise, reading. What are some of those are some of my favorite, Doc. What are some of your favorite?
Some breath exercise.
Breath exercises, sleep, and naps can be really helpful and beneficial. But if you're stressed out, you're toxic because you're not effectively removing those toxins from your life. And we need to begin to figure out strategies to minimize toxicity in your life.
I mean, toxic thoughts, right? They can cause stress. They can cause more toxins to build up in your body. So your body's already capable of efficiently eliminating toxins. The liver actually processes toxins by making them more water soluble and easier for the kidneys to excrete. Waste and toxins are removed through urine, feces, sweat, and exhalation. I think that's one that we oftentimes forget about, is that our lungs are a big detoxifier. So whenever you're exercising as well, it's not just the sweat, it's also all that you're exhaling. So instead of trying to rely on a gimmicky detox diet, let's prioritize a balanced diet, adequate hydration with good, clean, purified water, good amount of sleep, helps to reduce stress, and regular exercise. And all this stuff is going to support your body's natural detoxification processes. And you can help your body's natural detox pathways reduce your toxic burden at home by switching to more natural foods and products. So get up, get moving, start taking care of your body, and then start to reduce the amount of those toxic chemicals in and around the home.
So what we want to begin to transition to next is we had talked about toxicity, how to effectively remove toxins from your home and from your household, as well as how to begin to replace some of the major toxic exposures that you may come in contact with. But I think it's important that we transition that when we're talking about toxicity, when we're talking about nutrition, when we're talking about exercise and stress management, really what we're talking about is making you a more efficient version of yourself. And we do that by focusing on what an individual needs to do in order to reach their ultimate health potential. And I think to understand that, we need to understand what health is. And health is not merely the presence or the absence of some type of symptomatology or disease process inside of the body. And I think that's how we as Americans tend to think about our health and well-being. Well, I feel good, so I must be healthy. Well, then why are we the sickest industrialized nation on the face of the planet? Because of our health paradigm. We need to start thinking about our health not by how we feel, but how our body functions. And our body functions more appropriately by eating effectively, exercising effectively. What we've been talking about today is minimizing our exposure to toxins, thinking positively about our body, and minimizing our stress. But really, most importantly, health is how well that your body is functioning and healing. These are the 5 essentials of max living. And to most important of how your body is healing and functioning is how your nervous system is controlling your body, because it's your nervous system that controls all of the function of your body. And if we don't have an effectively functioning nervous system, and we eat well and we exercise and we take our supplements and we eliminate the toxin exposure, but we don't take care of the system that controls all of those other systems, we're losing our body's ability to function and heal the way that it's supposed to. So if you want to be healthy, you have to be functioning at 100%. And Doc is going to hit the number one way that you can ensure that you are functioning at 100%.
Yeah. I mean, look at this chart right here. I know I mentioned the liver, the lungs, the kidneys as major detox organs, but remember, it's your nervous system, it's your brain, your spinal cord, and all the nerves that branch off from there that are controlling function throughout the body. It controls how you're healing, how you're detoxing. So if there's a misalignment in your spine that is interfering with the brain's ability to communicate effectively with your liver, what's going to happen, right? The liver is not going to be functioning at 100%. You might not notice that because it takes us, we have to go down to 60% loss of, or 40% loss of function before you even start to notice any symptoms. But it's still there. So chiropractic care could be kind of the catalyst that your body needs to get over that hump, to help detox more effectively, so that you can get through your workouts more effectively, so that you can sleep better, so that you can, just live life and the life that you want with high quality.
So you had mentioned earlier, the liver. Let's just make it real simple. In order for the liver to function appropriately, it's got to be in communication with the brain. And the brain sends messages down the spinal cord, out over the nerves that are going into the liver. If we cut the nerves going into the liver, and I ask a preschooler or I ask a neurologist of what's going to happen to the liver, what are both of them going to tell me? It's going to what?
It's going to die.
It's going to die. It's not going to function. Well, you don't have a cut nerve going to your liver or any other organs inside of your body. You wouldn't be here if that was the case. But you might have pressure on that nerve from a spinal column that's not appropriately aligned. And that pressure on the nerve is called a subluxation. And if there's pressure on the nerve that's not allowing your brain to send all of that healing functioning to your liver, is it going to function to 100%? No. So it's the removal of that through a specific chiropractic adjustment that allows a body to function and heal the way that it's supposed to. And why it's important that my kids eat well, they exercise well, they take their vitamins, they sleep, they do all of the essentials that we need to do. But if there was one thing and one thing only that I could do for my child's health, it would be to lay down on our little adjusting table that we have in the living room of the house and adjust the spine to remove interference from the body's ability to function and heal. And as a result of that, they function better. I can remember a couple of weeks ago, Knox not feeling good at a baseball game. And we've had other kids not feeling good at a baseball game, and they run up to their mommy and daddy and say, "Oh, mommy, I have a headache. Can I have a Tylenol with red dye number 5 in it, which has been just removed?" Or they take some type of medication to mask that symptom. I was really proud of Knox the other day. We're at a baseball game. He's like, "Man, my stomach's not hurting. I'm not feeling myself. Dad, can we lay down on that bench right there and I can get adjusted?" And as a dad, I'm like, man, that's a kid who gets it, right? Mm-hmm. He understands that his body is designed, and you're seeing that I'm choking up, but this is how passionate I am about this, because his little body, your kid's body, and your body is designed to function and heal. And he understands that as a young man, and he's going to do everything within his power to remove those interferences to allow his body to function and heal the way that it's supposed to. And I know sometimes we have our patients that come in and maybe they're in their 7th or 8th or 9th decade that are getting adjusted because of general aches and pains and arthritis, and they don't necessarily love a loud, screaming, crying kid that's in the office. But man, I love loud, crying, screaming kids in our office, because that means if we have the ability to remove that interference from their body, that they're only going to function and heal that much better. So what should we be doing on a regular basis? And if you don't have a blank, you should go see a blank. Fill in the blank.
You need to get adjusted on a regular basis. And if you don't have a chiropractor, you need to go see a chiropractor.
That was a tough test that I just put you on there, Doc. I love it. I think we kind of covered everything that we need to do. Get adjusted, take care of your body, follow the action steps that we put in place for you guys. The action steps, Doc, why don't you hit a couple of these, just kind of tie up some loose ends for us?
Yeah. So I think the first thing you could do is go home, look around your house, think about what we talked about today, and identify maybe the top sources of toxins that you're exposed to. Maybe take yourself through like your normal daily routine and start from the morning and go all the way through the afternoon and evening and bedtime. Start to replace some of these products. Go to ewg.org and you can find some great replacements. You can fill out an order form with us to get some of these detox supplements that we were highlighting today. Schedule an appointment if you haven't yet. Give us a like on Facebook, share this post. Thank you. And, make sure you follow us on Facebook to just stay in contact with us, stay in the loop about any events or workshops or anything that we might have going on.
And we always have a lot going on. We really appreciate you guys tuning in, spending your evening with us. Please begin to make some small incremental changes in your toxic exposure. And I promise you, those will have drastic improvements in your overall health and well-being. God bless, guys.